Hey, you radical dudes and dudettes. That's right. We're back again with another totally tubular, as the kids say, episode of Background Noise. Yeah. Now, if you found that, that just happened pretty strange, well, then I suppose we're pretty on brand because this week we are once again talking about Stranger Things. This time we are looking at season 2 that came out 1 year after season 1, as things usually do. But as usual, we are your hosts. I'm Joseph.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Joe.
Oh, yeah. And we are going to look at Stranger Things. And, well, we're just going to, well, before we talk about anything, we've got a couple things to just, kind of bring up. We had resident streamer dude Joe had a very good stream. Pokemon Coliseum, I think.
First of all, I identify as resident cool guy, Joe.
Okay, resident cool streamer guy, Joe. Very well, very well. We respect pronouns here. Yes.
It's news to me.
Yeah. Whoa.
More of an adjective.
Anyway, yeah. There was Joe had a very nice stream where we happened to be guest stars, me and Jack, and we talked a little bit about the classic Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So if you're interested in just another hit, us going over another hit and some Pokemon gameplay in the background, ironically enough, then yeah, go check it out. I think that's pretty much. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
I will say I don't know when this episode is going to go up.
Tomorrow.
I think that this episode goes up on Wednesday. I will be streaming the day this comes up. At around 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're not in Eastern Standard Time, convert that into your time zone. So if you want to hang out with me while I continue to play through Pokemon Coliseum and chat about other movies, feel free to do so.
I thought you were about to tell our audience to convert themselves to Eastern Standard Time.
Yes, please convert yourself into an Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern Seaboard, move now. We can tell you.
Do your job.
Well, I do think that's all of our current announcements. Nothing too big on the sheet. I was given just a small piece of paper by Jack. Also, something at the bottom that says "Get on with it." Wow. Okay. Thank you, Jack. Anyway, why don't you start us off, Joe, with a little recap for folks who haven't seen it? Well, first of all, spoilers, obviously.
Yeah.
For season 1 and season 2 of Stranger Things, go watch it. It's not too bad. I'm not saying, hey, Netflix is boosting their prices, so you might need to use a 30-day free trial or another method. But just see it where you can. Anyway, Joe, take us away.
All right. So we start off Stranger Things season 2 with kind of a recap of, if you watch it on Netflix, you'll literally get a recap, but also we get a bit of a here is where everyone is at. So we find out that Police Chief Jim Hopper, has adopted Elle and is now, not like officially, not legally, but has taken her in, and they're living in a cabin where they have a bunch of rules to keep her safe from the bad men. We know that, Mike, Will, Dustin, and Lucas are all hanging out, being friends. They're at a higher grade level now, chilling out, still being the weirdos that they are. Nancy and Steve are still dating. Jonathan is still being weird, which is pretty much his modus operandi. And who am I forgetting? Joyce Byers is dealing with being a mother who had lost her son in the Upside Down for a month and being hyper overprotective. So we get a few different plot lines of each of these characters dealing with stuff. I'll do the one that's probably the shortest first. I think the shortest plot line is that Nancy and Steve are not having the best of relationships because Nancy can't get over the fact that they never actually told anyone that Barbara died. And so eventually that causes them to break up. She teams up with Jonathan. They go and they get a recording of the government people talking about what happened. And they take it to some conspiracy theorist guy who publishes the story and gets the government building shut down, that gets the Hawkins lab shut down. That's probably the shortest story, because after they do that, they join back in with the rest of the characters fighting monsters.
A lot of things going on this season.
Yeah, we have a lot of moving parts going on in this season. We also get, I think the next shortest story is probably Elle's story, or at least the most coherent story is Elle's story, which is she's getting more and more upset with Hopper because he's dealing with his own problems. And so eventually she decides to run away and try to find her family. She finds her mom, finds that she's kind of catatonic, but also maybe able to psychically communicate with her. And her mom tells her about using this weird psychic connection, tells her about another kid that she saw in the Hawkins lab facility, who Elle tracks down. They team up, they go on a vision quest together where they go and they beat up a bunch of people, basically, to make themselves feel better. But then Elle realizes that it doesn't make her feel better and she needs to go help her friends instead. And then she returns to come save the day, basically just like she did in the first season. You throw her, she's the queen, right? Like in chess, she's the queen. You throw her at things and she kills them. Then I think the most, we also have Hopper, who is dealing with a weird mundane problem where all of the farmers' pumpkins are dying. Oh, what's going on there? Well, it turns out there's a magical plant vine thing that's growing out from Hawkins' lab. The gap into the underground, the hole into the underground is still open, and stuff is spreading from out of it and growing into our world, and it's killing all the plants. And so that's the thing that he's dealing with that's keeping him from being with Elle, which is what makes her get upset, so she runs away. And then I think the most, I don't know if it's the most convoluted, but the most detailed part of the plot is dealing with the four boys.
Mm-hmm. And now a new girl comes in.
And
There's three new characters.
Yeah, we get the new character of Mad Max, Maxine. I can't remember her last name. Does she have a last name?
She does, but I don't think it gets directly mentioned, does it?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Maybe. We have Maxine, her older stepbrother Billy. She's not his sister, as he gets very upset about several times. And then we get, we also get their parents, but they're basically non-entities of characters. So Mad Max is hanging. I'm going to call her that the entire time because that's
sure.
Cool
Might as well.
Mostly Dustin and Lucas are interested in her as a potential love interest, but Dustin also has the thing where he found the weird slug creature that Will threw up at the end of season 1. So Dustin actually gets a lot of character growth, and he's almost the most main character. He's
of the kids, yeah, like him and Will probably get the most focus.
Yes. Well, and then so Dustin is both interested in Max and also dealing with Dart, which is what he names this creature, until it grows up into like a dog-sized thing that can eat your face. And Lucas is mostly just as a love interest of Max, who actually they end up being together. Will is dealing with the fact that he keeps seeing the Upside Down. He keeps having hallucinations, quote unquote, except they're not hallucinations. He's actually temporarily being pulled in there, and one of the things in the Upside Down gets a hold of him and starts like semi-possessing him and connects him into the giant network of stuff that's growing out of the Hawkins lab. And Mike is just being mopey because Ella's gone, and so he is almost a non-entity of a person. He gets mad that Max is trying to join their group and constantly gets upset about that because he wants Elle to come back, and then Elle comes back and he screams at Hopper for keeping her a secret, and that's pretty much all the stuff that he does this season.
Yeah, pretty much.
But eventually we get to the point where all these plot lines converge, where Will is infected. They need to get the thing out of him so that they can kill the monster in the Upside Down, or so they can shut it away. So it likes the cold, so they put him like basically in a sauna in order to sweat it out of him. I'm not even kidding. That's almost exactly what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, it turns out that Steve is an excellent babysitter, and so he takes the other boys and Max. He gets beat up by Billy. That's a side point. He takes the other boys and Max into the tunnels to set them on fire to distract all the monsters, so that Hopper can take Elle to the Hawkins lab, which is completely abandoned because everyone died in there in a previous scene. And she closes the gap.
R.I.P. Bob.
And then obviously,
don't forget about Bob.
Oh, I forgot about Bob. Man, I forgot. But yeah, so during this, one of the points of normalcy is that there's the character of Bob, who is Joyce's boyfriend, who like is kind of our POV character for people who forgot what happened, as he's having to figure stuff out along with, like, he's trying to figure things out and also keep up with the new stuff that's happening. But Elle closes the gap, and then everything is perfectly fine, and they have a nice little happy dance with all the kids. Where, let's see, Dustin dances with Nancy, who is now dating Jonathan, by the way. That's not important until next season. Mike finally gets to dance with Elle, so it's great. Will gets a dance with a random other girl that just happens to be there because neither of them have personalities. And
Pair 'em off.
Lucas and Max are now dating. So that's it. That's how we end season 2. And there's definitely nothing suspect going on except for the fact that we get a cutaway scene where we see that the monster is still in the Upside Down trying to get back in.
Ooh.
And Joyce and Hopper share a cigarette.
Oh, yes. So, yes, Joyce
Just like in the 7th grade.
Yes, because everyone is pairing off. Yeah, we have all of our couples pairing off, according to fandom expectations.
Yes.
As the kids say. All right. Yeah, you did pretty good for all those threads. You put it into an acceptable sweater. Smells a little bit like extra dimensional fungus. However, we can look past that.
That wasn't my fault. That was just the stuff I had to work with.
Alrighty. And well, honestly, I'm not quite sure exactly where to start because there is so much going on. I mean, I suppose a good place to start is, since all of this is once again, like the first season, very much character driven. Was we talked a lot about in the first episode. Go watch it if you haven't. Was it about how a lot of the characters seem to be these stock characters that are very easily and very well like just elevated to another level by the Duffer Brothers. So why don't we start there? I don't know. There's some new characters, there's old characters, new characters, red characters, blue characters, and then all the arcs to go with them, or non-arcs or whatever. Why don't we start there? What are some standouts for you guys
with the new characters, or just the characters in general?
Dealer's choice.
All right. I guess new characters, I thought a standout was Sean Astin as Bob. I really liked him.
Oh yeah.
Like Joe was saying, he was sort of the point of view character for all those who forgot season 1, or their friends forced them to sit down and watch season 2 without letting them watch season 1. So Bob was helpful for them, and he also reminded us how cool Radio Shack was when that was a thing. So gotta respect him for that.
R.I.P. Radio Shack.
R.I.P. Radio Shack and R.I.P. Bob.
Wait, is Radio Shack dead?
Oh yeah, it's been dead for like a decade.
I was about to say it went out of business so long ago. Joe, did you not know?
I didn't realize that. Okay, wow. Shows how old I am.
We've rocked Joe's world today. That's
Wait, hold on. It's been at okay, hold on. This is beside the point. We're getting sidetracked here.
It's true, however. But
anyway, yeah, Bob was great. It was sad to see him go, because really got attached to him as the season went on, as you start to understand things more. Very sweet character, and Sean Astin, of course, was great. Sadie Sink as Max, or Maxine, I thought she was a little annoying at first, personally, but as the season goes on and Mike keeps being mean to her and excluding her, she keeps being hurt by her brother, you almost feel for her. At least I did. And you start to like her. So she definitely grew on you.
Yeah, at some point it's just like, all right, I get it. I get why everyone's apprehensive, but come on. That's just a little being a little cruel.
Right. Yeah. And then I guess that brings us to her brother Billy, who, while he's fine with little screen time he has, season 3 is definitely where he shines, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, I mean, we get a little bit of a. I almost feel like they kind of retroactively put in some sympathy for him. Because at the beginning,
a little bit.
Yeah, you're like, oh, okay, I understand why he's in this bad position where he's a terrible person. Like he is a terrible person.
Yeah.
That's not a joke. Let's not mince words about it. But you're oh, okay, I understand that he had kind of an abusive childhood, and that's why he's this way. And it's like they're trying to kind of buy you sympathy for him retroactively.
Right.
Which I don't know. For me, it fell flat, but that it could be dealer's choice, or it could be viewers' discretion on that point. Season 3 maybe we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you that we have now that I'm thinking about it, Max and Bob are both for the different demographics, right? Bob is the POV character for the adults who are watching along, where they're like, okay, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but I'm enjoying this, and he's just happy to be there, right? He's just happy to be included. He's exactly like Sam, right?
Yep.
He's just happy to be included and gonna go along and be loyal, right? And then we got Max, who is the defiant kid character who wants explanations and wants answers and refuses to go along with things until there's absolute proof of what's going on, which is kind of a neat contrast there.
See, now I'm trying to look up the name, because you had mentioned we had the two characters for the demographics, and I completely agree. And we actually even have a character who relates to us when it comes to the teen demographic, which is the theory guy who Jonathan and Nancy go to see, and I cannot remember his name for the life of me, so I'm trying.
Murray.
I think it is Murray.
We're going with Murray.
He's crazy conspiracy guy in my head. That's what his name is. I don't know. I'm assuming he has an actual name.
It is Murray. I confirmed.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. I really like Murray.
Murray's great, and I'm so glad they bring him back in season 3. He was a blast.
Ooh,
and
that'll be good.
He nailed what screen time he had. So he was a lot of fun.
He had a minor role this season, but he played it to the hilt, which is good.
Yep.
He had a big impact too, which is you really wouldn't suspect. It's kind of like the science teacher from last season. It's like small role, big impact it makes sense. It's not just like, oh man, we like this character, let's give him something really good to do. It's like no. This guy's the one who devises the whole pretty
the
much
whole tape
the whole
scheme.
expose. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Now, as far as go ahead.
No. You go.
Well, I was going to transfer to a slightly different topic, which is favorite old characters.
There we go.
Obviously, I think we said this last time. The two best characters are Steve and Hopper, and Steve is growing into his you saw the potential that he had season 1, and he is growing into that potential.
Another good name for season 2 is the season where everybody now loves Steve.
Yes, yeah, it is the season where everyone loves Steve, because he went from being a jerk, but he was also he was a high school student who didn't know what he was doing, right, to being actually a pretty decent guy, and especially because of the babysitting, we get to see we go from King Steve to Dad Steve, right? That's what we get, the transition there, and it's great. I love it. I love him taking care of the kids, and then they take his unconscious body and stick him in the car, and Max is driving, and he wakes up and he's freaking out, and then he sticks the landing of okay, if we're gonna do this, I'm going to be in charge. If we're going into the tunnel, then I'm going with you to protect you, even though we shouldn't be doing this. This is great. I love it.
Since we're here, get behind me.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I really had no idea that they would go this way with it, because I mean, again, who would have thought? There's just there were so many different ways that I guess the teenager relationship between the three of them could go. It's I kind of did see the what is it, Jonathan Nancy thing kind of come up, but it's who would have thought that? And they kind of, I don't want to say reference it, but it's just the fact that Billy is how he is. It's I was talking about, oh yeah, where's King Steve? It's King Steve's not here anymore. We got new Steve.
Right. And it's interesting because I do like how to show that off, right? In diegetic, is it the way it is? I think that's the word I'm looking for. But in a way of showing, instead of having him say he doesn't want to fight, he keeps pulling back until Billy's going to threaten the kids. And then it's oh, all right, you want to see King Steve? Fine. Now he loses the fight because he hasn't finished the transformation yet, right? That's why he loses from a thematic standpoint. But it's okay, you finally found the thing that he cares about enough to fight about now, which is great. It's great characterization, great character growth for the character. Great character growth for the character.
Yes. Use the word good. It's true though.
Yeah.
It's true. It is. That's exactly what it is. And then the other reason he lost is because he went up against a Stephen King bully, which is ergo a complete sociopath with a sad backstory.
Also true. Also
Mm.
true. Which is an unwinnable fight unless
Oh,
you have
yeah.
magic powers.
It's
The
true.
power of friendship. Well, speaking of the power of friendship, just to, well, no, we'll save that for another thing. But let's go with the power of friendship and old characters together. I don't know. I'm glad that Will Byers had some actual stuff going on instead of just being he's stuck in the fridge for a while. Like
Yeah.
he's stuck in the upside down fridge.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
you know, about midway through it happens again. And he's just like, oh, there he goes.
Although he gets a little bit because he gets to act as basically a villain, right? Because he's
Right.
a spy, right? There's the episode called The Spy
hmm
because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets a little bit, but still, yeah, he's because of that, he is my least favorite character of the four boys, because it's like, okay, he's the one who's talked about the most, but talks the least.
Yes, I agree. I feel like the real Will we do not know very well, except that he's pretty shy and introverted and all that, and being known as Zombie Boy hasn't helped his charisma at all.
No.
At least somehow it helped him more than it did Dustin when it comes to getting a dance. So, hey, if it works, it works.
Poor Dustin.
I know. It's so sad. With the hair and everything, he tried so hard. But we definitely, like you were saying, we definitely do get more of Will this season, and Noah Schnapp, I think, as Will, does a very good job with what he's given, because he, like you were saying, for the second half of the show, he really is playing a villain for most of it, which I'm sure was fun. But yeah, he wasn't really Will. He was half the season he was being controlled by that Mind Flayer shadow monster. But speaking of the shadow monster, as far as an upgrade to the villain of the Demogorgon, I thought that worked very well. As far as raising the stakes with our antagonists, doing that on top of the Demodog army and all of that, I thought that worked very well.
Yeah, it was a classic escalation, right? We go from one concrete physical monster to, this is the guy who controls all of them. Like we go from Darth Vader to the Emperor, right? That's kind of a classic escalation.
Yep.
Almost literally what happens here. But I agree that it works very well. Although I do have questions about. Do we want to get into questions about what the Upside Down is and everything, or do we want to wait until later?
I feel like maybe there was more we want to say on characters. I had a couple more things I want to point out with characters, but we definitely want to get to that. I was trying to see what I had with characters here. I already mentioned Will. 11, well, not really given a ton to do. She was, we almost see her as much as Will this season. It's like we see her, but she's sort of off on her own doing her own thing. But she's still very good with what she's given. Just like in last season, she's very good. We already mentioned Hopper and Steve. Really, Hopper and Steve are the best dads. They are peak dadness in this show because Hopper becomes Papa Hopper, and which, in my opinion, is peak Hopper. Yeah. It doesn't get better than that. I mean, you have Chief Hopper, which is great, but you can't. I mean, once Papa Hopper enters the picture, you can't even compare. Come on.
No.
And so his relationship with 11 was, it might be tied for my favorite relationship with I think the one that ties it would be for me Dustin and Steve. I think that was a very sweet friendship that I'm so glad they introduced, and I think they just knocked that out of the park.
Yeah. Also, I mean, Dustin and Steve is not one that you're expecting. Right?
No,
it's not a relationship that you're like, oh yeah, these are the two characters that need to pair up. Like Hopper and 11 makes sense,
right?
Because Hopper, his daughter has died, and it's kind of like in his mind, it's a replacement, or maybe not a replacement, but a chance to try again. Whereas like Steve and Dustin, you aren't expecting it, and yet once you get it, you're like, yes, give me all of this, give me more of this.
It literally just comes out of left field because that's the funny part. It's just like, oh, these guys just happen to be here at the same time, and it's just like, oh, well, it's hilarious how well they're able to work off of each other.
Yeah, it's great.
Right.
Speaking of Hopper and 11, I gotta say it's like as good as the what is it as the I don't know what it is. It's like not mentor mentee thing with Steve and Dustin, but it's like I gotta say the stuff between Hopper and 11 this season was kind of my favorite thing, just because of it's a character with a very very deep history, I suppose. A very very deep history is like he wears it on his face. You can tell that from the first time you meet him, to someone who has to claw and to find anything about their history when spending a lot of the season figuring that out. That was some good reveals too. It was and of course we'll talk about it later, but it's like the pacing of a lot of 11 stuff, with some minor exceptions that we'll get into, was done very good. Like those reveals were spaced out pretty good. I would say one of my favorite things is her interaction in the I guess we're calling it the mindscape. I don't know, just with her mother and whatnot.
Yeah, that was a highlight for sure, when she finally gets to see her mom and gets to connect with her and see the flashbacks and all of that. That very well done. I agree.
I also like how they handled something very well that is often handled very poorly. Because like you usually, if a lot of times writers will say, okay, we have these two characters who are together and we need to drive them apart. And so they'll have a stupid misunderstanding that no sensible humans would actually have that kind of understanding, because they would talk and ask people questions and it would solve the problem. But they actually have a very believable wedge drawn, which is Hopper has things that he's dealing with, and he is clearly has anxiety and clearly has like frustration with himself that he can't be there for 11. And then 11 is frustrated because she can't leave, right? Like this is the only person that she ever gets to talk to, and he's not there and she can't leave. And so it's very grounded in their characters of the reason why she runs away, as opposed to just being some stupid thing that they need to do to have the plot happen. It makes sense from a character perspective that this is happening. Yeah. And we get the scene where Hopper is talking on the speaker or whatever, and apologizing and trying to explain himself, and he can't exactly figure out how to do it, but you understand the emotion behind what he's trying to say, and it's great. I love that. I love the fact that they handled that very well.
The only thing that is hard to believe is that Hopper would leave the stuff about her mother in the same house that she lives in, when he has very clearly said she is, he's very heavily implied that she's dead or gone, whatever you want to say.
Fair. Where else would he put it, though?
I know. No, it's a super minor thing. I'm just like, I mean, either tell her the truth or make sure you've hid that really well.
Yeah, well. Yeah, I was about to say it's the dirt file. You can't exactly hide it at the regular house, because they still got that bugged. And speaking of them, that's another thing. The Hawkins government conspiracy is, that's an interesting point gets an interesting point of development too, but that's not character related, so we'll just throw that down the line.
I feel like we've probably, unless you guys had other things to mention, I feel like we've pretty much covered characters pretty well at this point.
Well, the only thing I can think of is the thing about episode 11 or episode 7, which
do we just want to talk about episode 7?
Might as well be episode 11.
Yeah, well, it says it's episode about 11, and it's episode episode 7. Partially character problems, partially pacing problems, which is Jack, you mentioned before that we don't get a lot of 11 through most of the season, and instead they just give us an entire episode that is a dump of everything related to 11 all at once, right?
Yeah, it's interesting with sorry, what were you gonna say, Joseph?
I wasn't really gonna say anything other than it's like, for folks who have not seen episode 7, is just the 11 episode where she finds the other psychic child.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It does extremely little to add on to the overall season. Most of the growth that 11 had done, she could have either found at her mom's house or somewhere else in between, leaving and coming back. I feel like she had very little character growth in that episode personally. And the episode itself, it gets a lot of hate. I feel like it would get a lot less hate if it was somehow released separately, or it was just personally, I think the worst thing it could have done was be put where it was, because it came right after what is possibly, to my knowledge, the best cliffhanger we've gotten from any episode, which is episode 7. We've realized Will has been a spy for the Shadow Monster's entire time. The entire army that went down to take out a lot of the Demodogs have been massacred, and now the Demodogs are coming up to the lab, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen?
So many of them.
Right, it's terrifying. And then you're thinking, okay, what's going to happen? We get an entire episode about 11, which is not what anybody wants when you are that high strung.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, what the heck is going to happen? This is not what I wanted. So I feel like a lot of people were irritated mainly because of that, which is understandable. But I feel like you take that, like me going back and watching it now, I feel like I liked it more now than I did before, because I know what happens. I have that resolution. It's not like I'm freaking out like, what the heck's going to happen? I do not care what's going on with 11 right now. When you take that into context, it's, again, not a great episode, probably, I can't remember. We'll get to season 3, but from seasons 1 and 2, it is pretty easily the worst episode, but it is still not what I would say is a bad episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the problem is
a 6 instead of an 8.
Yeah,
which is what the rest of them are.
Sure. Yeah, let's go with that.
The problem is you built excellent tension at the end of episode 6.
Right.
You cannot maintain that tension over an hour of watching unrelated stuff. Like I do not care about 11 at that point, because I all of the other characters I care about are all in peril. I think, except for Nancy and Jonathan, right? They're the only ones that aren't there, I think.
Right.
And so everybody else is in peril. So that is what I care about.
Yep.
So you know what would have been an excellent way to do this? The correct way to do this is to front load all of 11 stuff. And so then, like, I don't know, maybe it's episode 5 is where they have this going on.
Yeah.
Something like that. And then they don't show 11 for the entire second half until she shows up and throws the Demodogs around to save them when they're getting attacked. Because then it's like you've almost forgotten about her. Because like her stuff happened. And you're like, oh, no, how are they going to get out of this? We don't know. And then you start seeing them getting thrown. Like you're just inside the house and you hear them getting thrown around, but you don't know what's going on. And then you see her walk through the door and you remember, and it's very cathartic. That would be so much a better way to pace it. And then 7, then that episode is another episode where you get important plot details, but it doesn't stick out as being so annoying like that.
Right. It could have very much done well as like an episode 5. Like you put it right in the middle.
Yep.
Could have worked very well.
Or even like this, like episode 6 or something. It's like, I mean, you can keep like the, I don't want to say keep it almost exactly the same, because I mean, part of it is directly finishing up like, the mindscape journey or whatever. So, you know, there'd have to be a little rearranging, but it's like, in the end, it's like, if you just keep it before they do the hospital stuff with Will, which, you know, and then at least all that, if anything, it leads to more good dramatic stuff, because, you know, what is it? When she leaves, the thing that gets her to leave is like she sees visions of like seeing Hopper in that room and seeing Mike saying it's like, oh, it's a trap. It's like, oh man, what's going on here? It's like, and then, you know, then we figure out, oh, that's what happened. Because I love it when shows do that, just like the parallel episode. It's like, oh yeah, one episode stuff's going on, and then something will happen that's just like, oh, how did that happen? And then another episode expands on it, which is, I mean, I still liked it that they did it that way. That kind of saved the last couple minutes of that episode for me. But yeah, it just kind of felt like, hey, we want to do this one. We got the budget, we got the power to, let's do it. Where should we put it? I mean, it's not like it was just thrown in there willy-nilly, like some other things, but you know.
it was almost like they were trying to do a pilot for another show in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It felt like Book of Boba Fett syndrome, where we got Mandalorian 2.5.
Right.
It's like,
Mhm.
listen, I expected to see it almost did feel like some kind of Marvel thing, which we talk about Marvel a lot, but it's permeated society. It's part of society that we live in this society. But it's like I expected to see, the Outcasts will return in Stranger Things. Outcasts coming 2021. It's like, no, I don't care about these dweebs. I don't. I mean, they're not even dweebs. They're like psychotic, but
they're less than
I don't
dweebs.
even care.
They're less than dweebs. Yeah. Yep. They're the only character we care about in that whole thing is 11, right? Because she's the only one that returns. So,
Right.
I think the Duffer Brothers wanted to include the fact that the 80s started the punk like subgenre even more than they did the last season. So they're like, listen, what's more punk than an urban environment in the 80s? I don't know. So give us everything. And then it's like, and I have no idea what season 3 is. Is it watching this for this show is the first time I saw season 2, so I don't know if they do come back for season 3, but I feel like the only reason you're kidding me. I feel like that's the only reason they were included is like not for their own show or anything. It was just, oh man, we're gonna have wacky adventures with them next season, and they don't even show up.
Well, I think it's after the bad reception of that episode they decided, and we're done.
Yeah,
I mean, good. Yeah, I guess, but okay. In that case,
we still have 2 more seasons. They might come back, or at least 8 might come back in 4 or 5. I'd be shocked if we didn't at least see her again.
2 seasons? What?
I thought they're ending on 5. I could be wrong.
we'll find out.
We'll find out.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, what is it? Speaking of 80s influences, bad transition. Joe, what do you want to talk about the Upside Down for?
Oh, well, so I have questions about the Upside Down. Because is it a parallel universe? Is it an alternate dimension? Is it another planet in the same universe? Because some of those things make sense, but not all of those things. Like some of the things that we know about it don't all make sense for any of those. Because like let's say it's another planet in the same universe, right? Why does it have a bunch of houses that look like it has all the houses and buildings and stuff from our world? But then it's like, okay, is it an alternate universe? So this is an alternate reality where these shadow monsters exist and have eaten everyone? But why would they still have all the same houses and things already? What makes the most sense to me is that this is the explanation the only explanation that makes sense to me. There is I don't know if it's an alternate planet, alternate universe, how big they want to go, but like the fact that 11 tore a rift caused the mirroring effect. So like in the immediate vicinity of where the rift has been torn, the area that they're seeing is a mirror of our world. But if you go beyond, like if you go further out from there, it goes into just whatever that world naturally would be. That's the only way that makes any sense to me. You could tell me if you think I'm overthinking this or not, but
that would make sense for the mirror thing because it's I figured it was just like a property of that world that it bleeds out and like infects the in air quotes real world. But I mean, I guess it might make sense that our world infected it too by mirroring the architecture. Maybe I don't know, because I mean it even changes with like real life too, because like you see the ending shot of the season is of like the school and it's got like the winter ball banners on it, but they're like all upside down or whatever. So I would say it's like they're bleeding into each other. I don't know, but it's like it really is that sort of it could be a bunch of different things. But what do you think, Jack?
I'm just still trying to process it. I feel like both worlds are happening at the same time, because like you mentioned the thing with the snowball and all that. So I feel like both worlds have to be, I'm not going to say same time zone, but going through the same time, experiencing things at the same time, because with the I want to say with Snowball the lights were on and all that. So it's like basically the mirror world, you're able to see these buildings, and they are still the creatures in the Upside Down are able to touch and interact with the environment only to a certain point.
Like
but
the
they
lights
can,
in season 1, right?
yeah, like the lights and stuff like that, and they
Mhm.
even reference that a little bit in season 2. But as far as the extent, it's like they can't touch like living, breathing things in that world. They can affect the environment only so much. They can see the environment. The environment reflects what we're seeing in the real world to a certain extent, but it's definitely not the exact same world. And it's not super clear, but it is interesting to think about.
Yeah, but also the question is, I have a feeling you can, and my evidence for this. So my feeling is that the Demodogs, the Demogorgon creatures, are the native inhabitants of that world,
Mm-hmm.
but the Mind Flayer, I guess is what we call him, right? The Mind Flayer is not a native inhabitant of that world. My thought, and the reason for this is because he controls the Demodogs, and he also can control Will. So my assumption is that that is a creature that goes from world to world, like consuming things and integrating them into itself, and it has completely overtaken the world that we call the Upside Down. It has completely consumed that, and then when L tears the hole between them, it's like, oh, new food. Now I can spread to a new world, and that's why it starts growing out with it. Like, it is willing the tendrils to grow out. Like, that's not a thing that just happens because the worlds are touching. It's because the world is here, I'm going to grow out into it and try to eat things, and I'm going to send some of my pets over there to do my building, but I'm also going to start taking hostages, basically, to push my agenda forward. So I think that the Mind Flayer is, and we actually, well, we can talk about this in season 3, but we see even more evidence of that because it like grows itself in our world. I'm spoiling it for Joseph. Sorry, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah. Oh no!
We were kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah, nothing happens. Nothing happens.
I mean, I knew he was coming back. Whatever it is coming back.
I don't know what the.
You know. I think we can prefers they them.
Respect.
I think actually, I'm pretty sure it prefers.
That's fair.
That's how you should refer to it.
Yes, indeed. And was it? I'm willing to believe that one a lot because I mean, you know, we went with the. We've gotten the whole D&D definitions from last season and this season have been fairly accurate despite the Hopper not seeing the relevance. It's like, you know, oh yeah, sees us as inferior. It's a foreigner in this world.
Yeah.
And you know, it doesn't even know where it's from, sort of thing. It's like, that makes sense.
Yeah. That's where we get
it's just a world carnivore. It's not just a carnivore on like individual animals, it's a carnivore on worlds.
Carnivore Mind Flayer, the latest hit band to come out of the 90s.
Good grief.
Yeah, that was definitely a punk band or a ska band, one of the two.
Good grief.
I can see ska actually. Yeah. All right, guys, new background noise project. Start the ska band.
No,
the Carnivore Mind Flayers.
Nope. I reject.
New Patreon goal. 100 subscribers. We start the Carnivore Mind Flayers.
If we reach our stretch goal, that's that could happen.
No. That's a Kickstarter thing, not a Patreon thing.
Exactly.
Oh, that is a live slug reaction right there. Oh god, horrifying.
But it's funny you mentioned the Dungeons and Dragons because that's where we actually get one of my favorite Dustin lines, where he's trying to explain the Mind Flayer to Hopper, and he's like, and he starts making all these exceptions. He's like, you know what? It's just a game. It's not perfect. Not a great analogy, but you know, just I'm trying here.
Yeah, I do like how he goes on an explanation of how you have to summon a zombie army, and then he realizes, wait, we can't do that. Never mind. Back up. Back it up.
I'm very sorry I wasted your time. I will go on.
But I feel like we pretty much covered a decent chunk of it. I feel like we already mentioned, it's got a lot of great really tense moments where tension's really high, and got different chase scenes and stuff like that. Especially episodes 8 and 9, but some scenes we have that are just as good are some of the one-on-one scenes where you just get people talking. Like, possibly my favorite scene is the one between Dustin and Steve, them just talking on the train tracks. Just something sweet that. And the snowball, them finally putting that in, that was very sweet. It's the little things like that which just show that the best shows normally are the ones that focus primarily on character above everything else.
Mm-hmm. And giving you a chance to actually care about those characters.
Yep.
And the characters you care about characters you care about. It's all. Take notes.
Don't say character, Ken. However, you're right.
Characterly
speaking. You have to characterize the characters in a characteristic manner so they can go through character growth.
Characteristically speaking.
Characteristically speaking. Good grief.
I'm about to turn you all into characters who have an end date on the Wikipedia.
No.
Anyway.
Oh my.
He went there.
Wow.
Well, little violent, little scary there. Speaking of scary. Oh yeah. I did it. I used proper transitions. You're talking about tension, Jack? I would say that. What is it? This one is a lot more suspenseful, intense. This season, a lot more suspenseful, a lot more tense than the last one's. More, I suppose, spooky feel, which it was, and it had tension there too. But I mean, they're showing the Terminator everywhere. Of course, it's going to be more tense. I would say probably my favorite scene with that I had to bring up. It's an early one, actually. It's in the 3rd episode when Joyce is like looking over the camera footage. Also another good way to set up another thing about the Upside Down, their relationship with Bob and stuff. I think that's where Bob really got endeared to me there. But just reviewing the footage and seeing the mind flare in the outline, and just the score kicks in just right. And you get the look in her eye from like the first season when she's about to string up the lights. It's like, oh, here we go. It's about to kick off. And she frantically sketching out the thing. It's just like, oh, that's the stuff right there. Good job, Duffer Brother.
Yep. That is the first instance where we realize, like, we know kind of what's going on. We know that it's not Will dreaming, but like, we only know it because we know tropes. That is the first point where we're like, this is proof that Will is not just dreaming. This is
when the show confirms it for us.
Yes. Which is the most eerie and menacing point, right? The point where you realize, that you remember that monster that we fought, that we spent all of last season fighting, and it took forever for us to finally be able to kill it? Yeah, that's not a big threat compared to what we have coming.
That thing was a minion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right. How are we looking on time? Oh, man, we actually were able to squeeze a lot out of this one. I would say just because it's such a good show, but I mean, I wanted to bring this up just to see if you guys had anything written down about it, but just like the fact that this is branded like an 80s movie, Stranger Things 2, in like the thing, like the title screen itself, it's like the big 2 comes in. It's again a very, very good intro. It's like, just there's a lot of sequel elements that are sort of present, kind of like there's the callback either in theme or prop or anything, and it's just there was a lot of those without it being, to me, without seeming too, hey guys, remember this. So I think they kind of executed the concept of this second season acting like a sequel, a movie sequel, pretty well. But I was wondering if you guys had anything just about that in general, just like, if anything stood out to you in that sense or anything.
Like sequel elements?
Yeah, sort of.
I actually didn't even think about that until you brought it up, because like I knew, I thought it was kind of silly. I thought it was kind of like a funny little thing that they made it Stranger Things 2 as opposed to just like Stranger Things. It's the second season.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I really didn't feel, other than the general vibe of tension escalation. Right, we got to go from we got to go to a bigger monster. Other than that problem, I didn't really get sequel vibes. I got continuation of story vibes. So,
as good sequels should do.
As good sequels should do. Yeah.
Yeah. The only way I really thought about these sequel elements was just the characters definitely reflect something, what has happened in season one. They aren't these same characters. They've definitely grown from what has happened in season one. Some of them, have grown to be better, like Steve. Others are mopey and sad from what happened, like Mike. It just depending on the character, they've definitely have acknowledged and have grown, and season 2 is definitely built on season 1 like a good sequel should.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Well, that's kind of all I got, guys. Not that this, I was kind of thinking this would be more of an ensemble episode, and it seems we've accomplished that pretty well, just like Stranger Things season 1 and 2. But yeah, I feel like we should maybe move on to some number ratings. I can't remember what I should have reviewed our podcast to see what we gave the first season. But either way, let's see.
I don't even remember if we did.
I don't think we did for season 1, but hey, why not? We are professionals after all.
Yes,
sure.
Exactly. Why don't we just do both now? And that way people will have to watch this episode if they want to know what we thought of the first one. I like it. I like these ideas here. All right. What is it? I'll start us off. I gotta say, Stranger Things season 1, 9 out of 10. I really liked it. Really cool. Pretty cool. But anyway, season 2, just it didn't lose itself. It didn't do anything too crazy, while also doing things that were very crazy and good, building upon that already good foundation without, I suppose, caving to the whims of a bigger budget, which, I mean, you can automatically tell. The first scene we get, of course, is, okay, they got a budget now. And yeah, the only positive things came from that, aside from episode 7. And as such, I will give season 2 also a 9 out of 10.
Fair. I'm also season 1, 9 out of 10. If they didn't have season 7 messing up the flow, I would
episode 7.
Yeah, sorry, did I say season 7?
Yeah, you're good.
If they didn't have episode 7 messing up the flow.
I really hope we don't get a season 7.
Yeah,
well, I hope we don't get a season 5.
I would say the same for season 2, but that does take it down a point for me. So season 2 is as a solid 8, but still pretty good, still excellent.
Yep, I'm pretty much in agreement with both you guys. Season 1 is definitely a 9 for me. Season 2, it's frustrating too, because season 1 told the entire story in 8 episodes. Season 2 could have done the exact same thing, but they decided to do 9 and throw that other episode in there, which was not necessary. So that does pull it down a little bit closer to sort of like 8.5 to an 8 for me. If you put that aside, of course, it still has that same quality of a 9, but with that additional episode in mind, it is closer to like an 8. But I still absolutely loved it, and if I were to rewatch the show, I would definitely watch both seasons as a thing. And personally, I think I forgot to mention this, I would have been totally happy they just ended at season 2, because I thought it brought back a lot of the things, and we saw a lot of growth. Pretty much every character had a decent ending. I wish Steve had ended up with somebody nice, because I feel like he deserved better than Nancy. But aside from that, everyone else pretty much had nice endings and were mostly happy. So I loved how season 2 ended. And 1 and 2, I think, make for a very good story. So I love them both, but that's probably my ratings there.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
And I would say I said the same thing about season 1. It's like, oh, it doesn't need a season 2. What can they do? And it's like, they can do a lot. But I've got a feeling I'm not going to be. I'm gonna step out of my cautious optimism bubble. I'm gonna put my toe in the water and say I'm going to be wrong about season 3 as well. But after hearing what you just said, Jack, that toe's going right back in the circle. So Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's everything from us here. Tune in next time. Next time being I don't know when, because in between now and the release of season 4, we are going to be covering the 3rd season of Stranger Things. So
Mhm.
keep an eye out for that. Next week we are of course going into more Stranger Things. Only it's what is it? Strange because we're talking about Mr. Doctor. I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Doctor.
Doctor Strange. Which I mean, I suppose it is, but who are we to judge? Yeah, we're talking about Doctor Strange 1 and 2. And I think that's about it. We have
Mhm.
been your hosts. And of course, if you've been listening, great job. You made it all the way through. What's wrong with you? And if you've not, well, then that's just fine. You've been listening to background noise. And if Bob has taught us anything, remember, don't confront your fears, always be afraid. Good night.